Hello, and welcome to As It Is Written. My name is Yaakov Ben Israel, and I'm the elder priest of the Culture Center of NCCI, the New Covenant Congregation of Israel. We're located at 3901A Covington Highway in Decatur, Georgia. At the Culture Center, what we do is basically we teach history, but we teach history from a biblical perspective. The Bible is a storybook. It's the greatest story that has ever been told. But man has managed to teach religion from a history book, and this is why he has so many different denominations and so many varying doctrines, because how is it possible to teach someone religion from a history book unless the people are totally blinded to the things that's truly written in the scripture? When we look out on the earth today, we see that crime is running rampant all over the earth. There are many things that are going on. But when you read the prophets, the holy prophets told us what the things was going to be taking place in these final days, especially when you get in the book of St. Matthew 24th chapter. The Mashiach told his apostles a lot of things that was going to be taking place upon the face of the earth before his return. And when you look at the signs are falling in place for the return of the Messiah. This can't last forever. In Genesis 15 verse 13, Yahweh told Abraham we'd be here 400 years. And so far, we've been here 393 years, so we can very well see that our time is pretty close at hand. This is the reason why the many things that's happening to our people are happening to our people. But we don't know these things because when we go to these churches, they talk about how good they want you to do in love and prosperity and believe and all this thing. But the Mashiach said, watch. When you begin to see these things come up on the earth, look up, because your redemption is near, right at the doors. No man knows the hour or the day, but we know for one fact that this captivity can't last for 400 years. Then you had 3.5 years of tribulation period that the earth is going into, and after that period of time, after the seventh trumpet is blown in the book of Revelations and the seventh vial is poured out, then the Mashiach will return back to this earth, not for the reason that many people think that he's going to return. When you get in Thessalonians, it says that we're going to meet the Lord in the air, we're going to forever be with the Lord. What are you going to do, hang out in the air with him? But when you read the prophets tell you exactly the place that the Mashiach is going to return to when he comes back to to shake terribly this earth. But the main reason that he's coming, when you read the prophets, not according to what man say now, but when you read the prophets, you find out that the main reason that the Mashiach is going to return is simply to redeem his people out of captivity when their power is gone. And truly, as a people, we don't have any power anymore. We went through the civil rights movement and gave up the economic base in our neighborhood, and now we do not have a power base to operate from, and all the nations are getting high above us, and we are becoming the tail, and all of us can see it. But that 10% that always did pretty good, and when you go back through the captivities that we've had throughout the Bible, you'll find out that there's always been that 10% that did real good, but the rest of the people are the poor of the land. Those are the ones that depend on the Creator for our daily bread. If you got everything you want, what do you need God for? So consider those things, because truly the things they're talking about in the church, people go to church and pay tithes, so they get a blessing. Well, they're still breathing, aren't they? That's a blessing in itself. But what we're looking for is we want to put in $1 and Yahweh give us $7 back. Well, it doesn't work like that. Just because it said that Yahweh will repay it to you sevenfold doesn't mean it's going to come in money. It can come in a whole lot of other ways, but what we look for is cash money. We go to church, we call ourselves paying indulgences, just like the Roman Catholic Church did, and the church has become the #1 banker every Sabbath day. But we read a lot of things and we hear a lot of things, but let me read you something to you that the prophet Zechariah had to say is going to take place once the Messiah returns, and see how this fits into the things that are being taught in the church today. This is Zechariah chapter 8, and I'm going to start this at verse 20. It says, "Thus saith Yahweh of hosts, it shall yet come to pass that there shall come people, and the inhabitants of many cities, and the inhabitants of one city shall go to another, saying, Let us go speedily to pray before Yahweh, and to seek Yahweh of hosts. I will go also. Yes, many people and strong nations shall come and seek Yahweh of hosts in Jerusalem." Jerusalem, Israel, here on earth, not in heaven. "And to pray before Yahweh." Verse 23, "Thus saith Yahweh of hosts, in those days it shall come to pass that 10 men shall take hold out of all the languages of the nation, even shall take hold of the skirt of him that is a Jew, saying, We will go with you, because we have heard that God is with you." Well, let's see, is that backed up in the New Testament here? I'm going to read some things to you out of the book of St. John here in the New Testament. This is St. John chapter 4, and I'm just going to read a couple of verses here. This is John chapter 4. Now, Yeshua had met a woman at the well, and they had a conversation. And let me pick this up at verse 19 so we can get the ending of this conversation here. Verse 19, this is St. John 4 in verse 19. "The woman said unto him, Sir, I perceive that you are a prophet. Our fathers worship in this mountain, and yet you say that in Jerusalem is the place where we ought to worship. Yeshua said unto her, Woman, believe me, the hour comes when you shall neither in this mountain nor yet at Jerusalem worship the Father. You don't know what you worship. We know what we worship, because salvation is of the Jews." Now, that's what the Mashiach said out of his own mouth. But this is not what we get when we talk to other people about it. Other people say, well, it don't make no difference. Well, if it doesn't make any difference, why are people trying to keep it so hidden of what nationality the Messiah was? Let me read something else to you that people aren't talking about too. It's in the book of St. Luke. I think we got a call on the line. Go ahead, caller. You on there? Go ahead, caller. You have to go ahead and talk, caller. We have to see if we can get you in the studio. Whenever we come on, we get a whole lot of technical difficulties. But go ahead and talk, caller. We'll pick you up if we can. Can we get that call in the studio?
Can you hear me?
Okay, well, while they are trying to take care of the problem that's at hand, let me read something to you, then just keep talking, and if it cuts into what I'm saying, then you can come on the air. I'm sorry for the technical difficulties, but it seems to be the norm on our programs. But that's because we got a message for you. This is St. Luke, when the angel Gabriel went to Mary. This is the first chapter of St. Luke, and these are some things that people don't talk too much about. In St. Luke chapter 1, and I'm going to start this at verse 30. It says, "And the angel said unto her, Fear not, Mary, for you have found favor with Elohim. And behold, you shall conceive in your womb, and shall bring forth a son, and shall call his name Yeshua. He shall be great, and shall be called the Son of the Highest. And the Adonai Elohim shall give unto him the throne of his father David. And he shall reign over the house of Jacob forever, and of his kingdom there shall be no end." Now this is what the angel Gabriel told Mary concerning the Messiah. But then when we get into the churches today and listen to the things that's said in the church, then truly we don't get this information. Why? Maybe somebody's trying to hide something from you. I think we got a call on the line. Let's go ahead and see if we can get that caller in. Can we get that caller in? Huh? Well,
yes, sir.
Kind of look like the phones is kind of messed up again, but that's the way it be sometimes. Sorry about that, folks. But don't stop trying to call. They might get the technical difficulty fixed. And if you get it on, then what you do is just go ahead and bring them on, regardless to whether I'm talking about something or not. And what we'll do is we'll see if we can get some kind of dialogue going. But anyway, these are the things that you don't get when you go to the church, simply because you have to understand who started all of the religions that we practice as a people today. These things weren't started by any of our people. These things were started by the nations. This is why they got so many different denominations. It's a big money thing. That's all religion has ever been, is a big money thing that's designed to keep people domesticated. But as far as doing the things that the Creator said do, nobody does the things that the Creator said. The first thing that they did in 312 AD was they changed the Sabbath day from Saturday to Sunday. Then they gave us Christmas, Easter, Valentine's Day, New Year's Day, you name it, they got it for us. Holidays that's been given to us by mankind. But when you get back in Deuteronomy 23rd chapter and read Deuteronomy 23rd chapter, you'll find out that Yahweh gave us holy days. And if you carefully read the book of Acts, Acts is the first 30 years of the church. And if you read Acts, you'll find out that the apostles, Paul especially, was always trying in a hurry to get back to Jerusalem to keep the feast days. Why? Because Yahweh told us you shall do it forever throughout your generation and all of your dwellings. And the strangers that dwell among you, as you do, so shall they do. I think, have we got that yet? Have we got a call on the line? Okay, well, bring him into the studio and I might hear him.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me, brother?
Yeah, well, I guess just go ahead and let's keep talking, Carl. If you come in, you come in.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Look here.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I think so. Bring him up just a little bit.
Yeah, there's a verse in Scripture that I once read where it said when the parents have a child that's incorrigible, and where he can't be changed, that the parents' duty is to take him to the village, and where the village is to stone that child. Mm-hmm. So are you familiar with that verse, brother?
That's written in my book.
Yeah, I knew it was in. I was hoping you could tell me just where it was. Because, one of the problems that we have with children today is that the children want to teach the adults without knowledge, where throughout history it's the adults who teach the children And then the children grow up with the wisdom, and then they are. But we have children now that
I can vaguely hear you, my brother. But go ahead and keep on talking. The audience hear you. I can vaguely hear you.
Yeah, I was just saying one of our problems.
But the thing of it is, my brother, is that if you spare the child, if you spare the rod, you're going to spoil a child. And Yahweh told us how that we are supposed to raise our children. You can't just let a child raise up and do all the things that child want to do instead of keeping that child under control. And when you look into our neighborhoods today, you can very well see that there a lot of our children are not in control, but it's a reason for that. See, the nations plan, if you read the scripture, you're going to find out that the nations plan on exterminating our children. Not just our children, but they plan on exterminating us also. And but this is why you must train your children in the way they should go. And that child will do, if you raise up, that child will raise up doing the things that's necessary for that child to be a productive child among people. I'm trying to find that a piece of scripture for you here, my brother, that relates to that I can't hear. This is in Proverbs chapter 19, and I'm going to read verse 18. It says, "Chasten your son while there is hope, and let not your soul spare for his crying." In other words, don't just chasten him while there's still hope for him, but don't just, because he cry, stop chastening the child. What we have a tendency to do is we'll chasten our children and then go and buy them a PlayStation or something to pacify them. And these are some things that that has caused us some very, very serious problem. So what you have to do is you must raise up your children the way that that you're supposed to. Listen to this. This is in Proverbs chapter 22, and I'm gonna pick this up at verse 15. It says, "Foolishness is bound in the heart of a child, but the rod of correction shall drive it far from him." If you don't chasten your children and try to raise them up in this system of things, the world will eat them up alive, and we can see that every day. I mean, look at the way our people dress. Look at the things that's going on in the streets. Our women have gotten to the place where they don't even hardly wear dresses anymore. You see, they like them real tight, form-fitting pants so everybody can see what their wears and so forth. And these are some things that shouldn't be. Like the law book says, a man shall not wear a woman's garment, and a woman shall not wear a man's garment. All that do so are in an abomination to the Creator. Plus, not only so, it says also that mankind should not lie with mankind as with womankind, and womankind should not lie with womankind as with mankind. All that do so are an abomination unto Yahweh. But in certain circles, we can see that these things are very well accepted among the people, simply because the people don't care what God had to say. People are faking at serving the true and living God. And to show you that, according to the scripture, Christ was resurrected on the first day of the week. And they called that Easter Sunday. Well, then that made Saturday the Sabbath day. And so why did the Christians change it to Sunday, the first day of the week? Why do they not do the things that Yahweh had to say instead of following things the way that they want to follow things about that prosperity thing? And you can prosper all you want to, but if you don't have the spirit of the living God in you, the spirit of Yahshua, then truly all is in vain. All of it is in vain. So just understand what it is that that's going on when we go to church. And when you leave church, go and take your book and sit down and read your book, especially the prophets, and see how those things compare with what you're being told in the church, because it's something radically wrong. That's why you got so many different denominations, simply because they never could quite get that lie straight. It was a lie from the beginning. Christianity was a lie from the beginning, and it's a lie now. Jews wrote this book. Black Jews. It was the Christians that set up those imposters over in Israel as the Jews in 1948. But if you go and read history of the siege of Jerusalem, it's a book out called Josephus, Wars of the Jews. If you go and read Josephus' account of the destruction at Jerusalem, according to Josephus, what happened was, after Jerusalem was destroyed, all the remnant of our people that was in the land was sold to the Ethiopians to work in the salt mines. Well, how did they get all over Europe? We know that all the people that are in Israel today that call themselves Jews, they either came out of Europe or they migrated from here, from America. But when you read the Old Testament, according to the Old Testament, the Jews were a black race of people. Even when Christ was born, they told him, say, take the child down in Egypt and hide him there. Well, how would it be possible to hide a Gentile, a white boy, down in Ethiopia during the time of Christ, and no one would have... Yeah, he was stuck out like a sore thumb. But the thing of it is that people just don't do any reading on their own. We have a tendency to go to church and let somebody talk at us and then think we know something. The phone number here is 404-873-1349. That's 404-873-1349. That's a different number than we usually have, but you might be able to get through on that number. Once again, the number is 404-873-1349. If you call that number, you might get some. You might be able to get through. But let me read something to you that people are not talking about. This is in the New Testament, and I'm going to read something to you that one of the prophets in the New Testament had to say pertaining to what's going to take place once the Mashiach returns. This is Micah chapter 4, and I'm going to pick this up at verse 1. But in the last days it shall come to pass that the mountain of the house of Yahweh shall be established in the top of the mountains, and it shall be exalted above the hills, and people shall flow unto it. And many nations shall come and say, Come, and let us go up to the mountain of Yahweh, and to the house of the God of Jacob. And he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his path. For the law shall go forth from Zion, and the word of Yahweh from Jerusalem. And he shall judge among many people, and rebuke strong nations afar off. And they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up swords against nation, neither shall they learn war anymore. Now, these are something that the prophets talked about, that man today, man don't talk about these things. Man talk about going off to Never Land and sitting down for thought and resting. And he haven't lived 20 years yet, but he want to go and sit down and rest forever, even forever and ever. And when you talk about that heaven thing, there's not one word written in the Bible about what you're going to do in heaven. But let me read something else to you out of the prophet Isaiah. This is Isaiah chapter 14, and I'm going to start this at verse 1. For Yahweh will have mercy on Jacob, and will yet choose Israel, and set them in their own land. And the strangers shall be joined with them, and they shall cleave to the house of Jacob. And the people shall take them and bring them to their place, and the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of Yahweh for servants and handmaidens, and they shall take them captives whose captives they were, and they shall rule over their oppressors. And it shall come to pass in the day that Yahweh shall give you rest from your sorrows, and from your fear, and from your hard bondage wherein you was made to serve, that you shall take up a proverb against the king of America, and say, how has the oppressor cease, the golden city cease? We can very well see that the Bible talks about things that man isn't talking about today. It even mentions America's destruction in Jeremiah 47. Jeremiah 50, Jeremiah 51, Isaiah 47, and Isaiah 13 and 18. These tell you that Russia is going to destroy America in 1 hour, in 1 day. But when you go to church, you don't hear these things. Why you don't hear them? Because people are after your money. That's all they're after is show and circumstance. Even like I read earlier, Christ said salvation is of the Jews. But just because Gentiles or white people call our folks Christians first at Antioch in Syria, the word has stuck. But if you read the book of Acts, if you go 20 years later, Paul say, I am a Jew of Tarsus, no mean city. Once again, the phone number here is 44873-1349. That's 44873-1349. There are many things in the Bible that a lot of people haven't read simply because people tell them to stick off into that New Testament. Well, there's no such animal as the New Testament. It's one continuous doctrine. It's what they put there once they began to put all of the holy books together. That's what Bible means, sacred books. And once they began to put these things together, then what they did was they separated the two testimonies from the Old Testament to the New Testament, and there's no such thing as a New Testament. Christ came for one purpose, to seal the blood, seal the new covenant rather, with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. And that's written in Jeremiah 31:31. It was prophesied, and in Hebrews 8th chapter, Paul clarified the fact that the Messiah came to make a new covenant with our people, the same people that the old covenant was made with. I think we got a phone call. Go ahead, caller, you on there.
Hey, how you doing, brother?
I can't hear anything.
Okay, how you doing, brother?
I can't hear anything.
How you doing?
Okay, how you doing?
I'm okay. Yes, I just have a question to ask. I was one day reading the book of Revelation, and I read like the 13th chapter. And it says, when I stood on the sand sea, I saw the beast. I'm still trying to clarify that, that whole chapter when I read from that chapter to the end of the book of Revelation.
Revelations 13?
Yes, sir.
You want some clarity on that? I'm going to give you some, but if you want some clarity on that, what you do is go back and pick it up in the beginning when it first got talked about. Go back into the 7th chapter of Daniel.
Okay.
And Daniel, the angel Gabriel told Daniel that the 10 kings, the beast had 7 heads and 10 horns and 10 crowns. Well, the 7 heads would be the 7 leaders that has ruled the earth, beginning with the Babylonian Empire in 6006 BC. Okay, those were your 7 heads. Rome fell in 476 AD, and now they putting it back together, and the deadly wound is being healed again as they bring the Holy Roman Empire back upon the earth. This is the organization that's going to fight the Mashiach when he comes. Now, the 10 crowns. What you have to do is you have to go back and count the kings that has come up and tried to revive the Holy Roman Empire since Rome fell in 476 AD. Hitler was the 9th king. The 10th one is on the scene today, and we're waiting for him to be crowned. This is why when you keep on reading in the book of Revelation, he said there are 7 kings, 5 have fallen and 1 is, and the other one is not yet come. And when you come, you must continue a little space. And one of those kings was of the 7 kings. In other words, he would be of the last empire that was going to sit up on the earth, and that would be the Holy Roman Empire. That's what it meant by the deadly wound was healed, and all the world wondered after the beast. Okay? And if you want to deal with the 10 crowns, I gave you the 7 heads and the 10 horns. If you want to deal with the 10 crowns are the 10 countries that's really gonna run this empire that they're gonna set up. The beast is this last king that's going to be crowned, that's going to rule the whole earth. This is why America has to be destroyed. The earth, if you go back and read history, the earth always did better when one king ruled the whole earth. There wasn't a whole lot of wars going on and famines and so forth like it is around the earth today. But and this is what is they're trying to set up is a one world governmental system. And when you go back and read the prophet Daniel, don't just stop reading the 7th chapter. Read on up to chapter 12, and then go back and pick it up at Revelation 13. Read Revelation 13, Revelation 17, Revelation 19, and then go in and start at Ezekiel 38 chapter and read Ezekiel 38 chapter, and which talks about the war, and then go into the book of Joel, the 2nd chapter of Joel, and start reading up to about halfway the 3rd chapter, and it tells you the exact thing that's going to take place once the Mashiach returns back to this earth. I think we got another caller on the line. Go ahead, caller. You're on there.
Yes, I was the same guy just called about the 13th chapter. Okay, like reading the end of Revelation, it said that.
I didn't hear that.
Oh, yeah. Never mind.
I think we got some serious technical difficulties, my brother. Okay. Well, anyways, that's what Revelation 13 is all about. As a matter of fact, we're in 2 places in the book of Revelations. We're in 3 places in the book of Revelation, and I give you the places that we're in right now, so you can see just about how close we are to our deliverance. Okay, we're in when you go into Revelation 6, we're in Revelation 6 and verse 9 through verse 11, which is the 5th seal. And then when you go into Revelation 13, you got to deal with, we're in Revelation 13 also. It's already coming together. We just have to wait until it comes together, because they're going to have 3.5 years, which is 42 months, which is the Great Tribulation period to run the earth. And this is when we as a people are going to receive the most frustrating problems that we've ever had. But it has its design. It's to make us wake up and see that something is going on, and we need to go back to our original roots instead of coming through all the changes that we have come through. And then you can go in Revelation 17, and Revelation 17 tells you about the Roman Catholic Church and the Protestant Church. Verse 5, it says, "And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth." Well, the Protestant Church came out of the Roman Catholic Church in the 1500s under a German named Martin Luther. Luther had went to Rome, and he saw how lavish the popes and cardinals and so forth was living, and he went back to his poor parish, and they formulated 95 theses, and they came up and nailed them to the Vatican door, and the Vatican was the one that labeled them protesters. Today we don't say protesters, we say Protestant. And I keep asking, what are you protesting? And nobody knows what they are protesting. But let me read something to you that's going to take place once the Messiah returns back to this earth here. This is in Revelations 19, and I'm going to pick this up at verse 11. And I saw heaven open, and behold, a white horse, and he that sat upon him was called Faithful and True, and in righteousness he doth judge and make war. His eyes were as a flame of fire, and on his head were many crowns. And he had a name written that no man knew but he himself. And he was clothed in a vesture dipped in blood, and his name is called the Word of Elohim. And the armies which were in heaven followed him upon white horses, clothed in fine linen, white and clean. And out of his mouth goes a sharp sword, that with it he shall smite the nation. And he shall rule them with the rod of iron. And he tread the winepress of the fierceness and wrath of Almighty Elohim. And he had on his vesture and on his thigh a name written, King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And I saw an angel standing in the sun. And he cried with a loud voice, saying to all the fowls that fly in the midst of heaven, Come and gather yourself together to the great supper of the great God, that you may eat the flesh of kings, and the flesh of captains, and the flesh of mighty men, and the flesh of horses, and of them that sat on them, and the flesh of all men, both free and bond, both small and great. And I saw the beast, and the kings of the earth, and their armies gathered together to make war against him that sat upon the horse, and against his army. And the beast was taken, and with him the false prophet that wrought miracles before him, with which he had deceived them that received the mark of the beast, and them that worship his image. These both was cast alive into a lake of fire, burning with brimstone. So, as far as that, all of that other stuff is concerned, you might want to go back in the book of Zechariah and read Zechariah. Zechariah told you the exact place that the Messiah is coming back to this earth. He's coming, I think it's in Zechariah 12. He's coming back to the Mount of Olives, the same place that he left from. But see, you don't get these things in church because the adversary, the devil, is who runs the Christian church. This is why they celebrate Easter, which is tied up with Ashtaroth, which is a bunch of paganism, and this is why they celebrate December 25th as Christ's birthday. But when you get into the New Testament and read what they call the New Testament, you find out the Mashiach was born in the summer. He was either born in late spring or early summer, because the angel Gabriel went to Mary in the 6th month of the Hebrew calendar, and the 6th month of the Hebrew calendar is September. If you count 9 months from that, I'm quite sure you will not come up with December 25th. But it's the day of the winter solstice. It's the day that the sun is furthest away from the earth, and it's a time that the nations have always celebrated. This didn't come about with the Mashiach. The only thing they did was took the thing that the Mashiach had to say and added it to the paganism that they was bringing upon the earth. And right now today, you go to one church, when they baptize you, they dunk you under the water. You go to another church, and they sprinkle you. So, I mean, which way is right? See, some people go to church on Saturday, some go to church on Sunday. Which one is right? You have to, but if you read the scripture will tell you which one was right. It told you in the beginning, in the Genesis. And Yahweh rested the 7th day. Well, look at your calendar. The first day on that calendar is Sunday, which is the first day of the week. And that will make Saturday the Sabbath day. But these are things that man don't want to deal with, simply because man like to excuse me. Man like to deal with what man like to deal with, because it's the customs of the people, and we just love everybody to death, so we just take anything that anybody give us. But let me read something to you here out of the book of Isaiah. And I tell you what, let me read something to you here out of the book of Isaiah, and see what Isaiah had to say about a few things that's going to take place once the Messiah returns, and see what, you take this to your preacher and see what he got to say about this. I think we got another call on the line. Caller, go ahead, you're on there. I can't hear the caller. I can't hear the caller. Keep on talking, caller. I just can't hear you, that's all. let's keep on talking. Maybe it'll come through after a while. We having some serious technical difficulties. Seems like every time I come on the program, we have some serious technical difficulties. But I'll give you a number that you can reach me at. Once I leave the studio, you can call me at this number here. It's 44630-0800. That's 404-630-0800. That's my cell phone number. So after 10:30, you can call me on that number. I think we got another call on the line. Let's try that again.
Yes. Hello?
Okay.
Hi, how you doing?
Oh, fine. How you doing?
All right. I heard you answer the call a speaker a minute ago, but I didn't know it was me.
Okay.
All right. I was going to ask you a question. Now, you were speaking of Revelations 19 a while ago. But I couldn't catch it because the TV messing up. But then you said go to Isaiah or something that was explaining it. I'm trying to catch it. So you think you could help me?
Yeah, I think so. If like I just told a brother a few minutes ago, if you want to understand the book of Revelations, you got to go back and read the book of Daniel. I'll leave that open for me, brother, so I can hear the brother if he says anything else. If you want to understand the book of Revelation, it's very easy to understand. All of the symbolism was told to Daniel, and you have to pick that up in the 7th chapter of Daniel and read up. Daniel chapter 7. Daniel chapter 7 starts off with the 4 empires that's going to be set up on the earth, and it goes right on down to the return of the Messiah back to this earth and the destruction of the powers that's supposed to be. Now, the way you pick that up in the book of Revelations is you pick that up in Revelation 6. Read Revelation 6. That started at verse 9. I think it's verse 9. Started at the 5th seal and go through, no, it's verse 12. Started at the 6th seal when Lucifer gets thrown out of heaven, and read down through the end of that. And then what you do is you go and you read Revelation 13, and that gives you this last king and the false prophet, which will be the last pope. And after you read Revelation 13, you begin to put 1 and 1 is still 2, and you begin to put the empires together. Daniel saw the whole animal. He named them all animals because they were so vicious. But John the Revelator only gave you portions of these animals, letting you know that this is the same empire that came up. The first empire that ruled the earth in 606 BC was the Babylonian Empire. When the Medes and the Persians, the Russians and the Iranians came through in 539, they ruled what? The Babylonian Empire. When the Greeks came through with Alexander the Great, they ruled the Babylonian Empire. When the Romans came through, they still ruled the Babylonian Empire. Now, in Revelation 17 tell you about the great whore. Well, let's look at that. All of the things that the Protestant church keep today, they got from the Roman Catholic Church. What's the difference? This is why I tell people, if you're a Christian, you are a Catholic, because the Catholics set up all the things that goes on in the church today. But let me read you, brother. Let me show you a place where you can go, and you can pick up the final war.
Yes, sir. You got me going now. You got me real interested.
Yeah, well, let me show you a place here you can go, and you can pick up the final war that's going to take place here. This is Ezekiel chapter 36, and then go read Ezekiel chapter 38. That's the final war that's going to take place upon the earth. And to add some more credence to that, go in the book of Joel. It's in the New Testament, the Old Testament. Go in the book of Joel And it's Joel chapter 2 and verse 1 up to through chapter 3 and verse 16. Joel chapter 2 and verse 1 up through chapter 3 and verse 16. And then, my brother, what you do is you go to show you where the Mashiach, the Messiah, is going to return to. You go into Zechariah, I think that's Zechariah chapter 8. No, it's Zechariah chapter 14. Go into Zechariah chapter 14 and read Zechariah chapter 14. And Zechariah chapter 14 tell you the exact place that the Messiah is coming back to this earth, that he's not going to be hanging out up in the air. Let me read something to you here. This is Zechariah chapter 14, and I'm going to read about 4 verses that says, Behold, the day of the Lord comes, and your spoil shall be divided in the midst of you. For I will gather all nations against Jerusalem to battle, and the city shall be taken, and the houses rifled, and the women ravished, and half of the city shall go forth into captivity, and the residue of the people shall not be cut off from the city. Then shall the Lord go forth and fight against those nations. That's when he fought in the day of battle. And his feet shall stand in that day on the Mount of Olives, which is before Jerusalem on the east. And the Mount of Olives shall bust in the midst thereof toward the east and toward the west, and there shall be a very great valley. And half of the mountain shall remove toward the north, and half of it toward the south. Verse 6. And it shall come to pass in that day that the light shall not be clear nor dark, but it shall be one day which shall be known unto Yahweh, not day nor night. But it shall come to pass that at evening time it shall be light. And it shall be in that day that living water shall go out from Jerusalem, half of them toward the former sea, and half of them toward the hinder sea, and summer and winter shall it be. And the Lord shall be king over all the earth. In that day shall there be one Lord, and his name one. So you can very well see that the Messiah isn't coming back here to just show up in the air like he's scared to come to this earth. Lucifer was only given 6,000 years to rule. Lucifer's rule is coming to an end. Then Israel, our people, was given 1,000 years to rule with the Messiah. And this is the secret that's being kept from you. This is why when they go in the Old Testament, they read something that's going to help prop up that lie they're telling about money and all that other stuff. But as far as prophecies and what's going to actually take place on the earth once the Mashiach returns, that's what you don't get. And the only way you're going to get that, understand one thing. People go to church, and the only thing they read is the New Testament. They may go back in Psalms and read something trying to make them feel good, or Proverbs, but it's the history of the world. Read your book. Your fathers left it to you. And if you read the whole book, by the time you get into the New Testament, you'll find out something is radically wrong. Somebody's lying about something, because all the prophets talked about a regathering of all of the Jews from all over the earth back to the land of Israel. And this hasn't happened yet. This hasn't happened yet. And the reason why it hasn't happened yet, because it's not time. It's not time for our deliverance. See, Yahweh has to put our people in a position to where we start depending on him instead of trying to depend on master like we do. See, we want to be free. We want to have the American dream. We want to live in white folks' neighborhood. Not me. I want to live in my own neighborhood. See, I feel more comfortable in my own neighborhood. You never find eagles and sparrows flying together. You never find lions and sheep running together. And you never see, look at the cat family. You got lions, tigers, leopards, all those big lions, but you never find them running together. But us, we want to integrate. We want to be like everybody else, and guess what? We still on the bottom of the social register, financially and economically, I should say, and politically. And I think we got another call on the line. Okay, that's okay. But if you read your book, you'll find out that it's many, many things that we aren't being told. But the reason why we aren't being told these things is simply because Lucifer's children do not want you to know who you are in your relationship with the Creator. And to show you that, let me read something to you out of the book of Hebrews here in the New Testament. Now, we already read what the Messiah said, salvation is of the Jews. Now, let me read something to you out of the book of Hebrews here. Hebrews chapter 8. I'm going to start this at verse 6. But now has the Messiah obtained a more excellent ministry, by how much also he is also the mediator of a better covenant, which was established upon better promises. For if that first covenant had been faultless, then should no place have been sought for the second. For finding fault with the people, he said, Behold, the days come, said the Adonai, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. Not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day when I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Egypt, because they continued not in my covenant, and I regarded them not, said the Adonai. For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, said the Adonai. I will put my laws in their minds and write them in their hearts, and I will be to them a people, and they shall be to me. I will be to them a God, rather, and they shall be to me a people. Now, that's part of the covenant. Now, let's go and see what Paul had to say about that in the book of Romans. Now, this is your boy Paul talking this stuff here now. Let me go read something to you Paul said in the book of Romans. This is Romans chapter 15. And let me read something to you at verse 8 here. It says, Now I say, the Yeshua, the Messiah, was a minister of the Jews for the truth of God, to confirm the promises made with our fathers. That's why the Messiah said in St. Matthew 18th chapter, I'm not sent but to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And this is why he also said in St. John 4:22 that salvation is of the Jews. Even when he was born, when the Israelites came back to see him, because his star, they said, Where is he that is born, King of the Jews? We've seen the star in the east, and we have come to worship him. Well, Yeshua, the Messiah, the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. The same people they call the apostles Christians at Antioch in Syria has called us a bunch of names since then. It look like we get our name changed about every 4 or 5 years. So, you know, the thing of it is that I think we got a phone call on the line. Go ahead, caller, you're in there. I can't hear the call.
Hello, yes.
Yeah.
I wanted to know, does it say anything about the Prophet Muhammad in the Bible?
Muhammad Mustafa?
Yeah.
Well, let's look at it this way. It was the Arabs that had us in captivity in 606 BC, the Babylonians. Iraq is old ancient Babylon. As a matter of fact, the city of Babylon was 25 miles north of Baghdad. So why should I believe anything they got to say? I mean, we had prophets of our own. I believe what's excuse me. I believe what's written in this Bible here. And they're going to tell me that the Quran is an extension of the Bible. The Bible don't need no extension. It contains the past. The prophets gave us the present and the future. And what it did was it took the ball out of our hands and put it in the Arabs' hands. Well, that don't seem too right for me, simply because the Bible, the prophets still talked about the deliverance of the children of Israel. And it said they're going to take them captives whose captives they were, and they're going to rule over their oppressors. So when it come down to Christianity and Islam and all these other pagan religions, which one of them did we start? What religion did we practice when we first came over here as a people? Definitely it wasn't Christianity, and it wasn't Islam. The older people sang songs of deliverance. They called them songs of Zion. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. I looked over Jordan, and what did I see? A band of angels coming after me, coming for to carry me home. 'Tis that old ship of Zion. I'm going down to the river Jordan one of these days. All of our old established churches are named after places in Israel. So the things that has happened to us and the things that was prophesied pertaining to us shows, beyond a shadow of doubt, that we are the Hebrews, and that what we practiced was what they call Judaism. And guess what? We still practice Judaism today, according to what's written in this whole book, and not according to some man's interpretation. I think we got another call on the line. Go ahead, caller.
Yes, I don't ever hear anything about who King James was. Could you elaborate on that more for me?
I didn't hear.
Could you elaborate on who King James was for me?
On who?
King James.
King James?
Yes.
King James was a man that commissioned 19 priests, 19 of our priests called Essenes. They was at Alexandria. This was after the fall of Jerusalem, and they had sold our people down into Ethiopia. And at Alexandria, King James commissioned 19 of our priests called Essenes to translate the scripture from Hebrew to Greek so that they could understand it. He paid them to translate it. So they translated the book from Genesis to Malachi. So that you Gentiles could understand the book. See, Paul had went to these nations. This is why the Holy Ghost was having people speaking in tongues or other languages back in those days, simply because it was people that was going among other nations to teach the other nations what was given to us to teach the nation. But as far as, like I said, as far as King James is concerned, I've heard a lot of stories where he wrote the book. No, he didn't. No, he didn't. If he did, he was a genius. He was a genius because there's some things that he wrote, if you want to believe that, it was some things that he wrote in the prophets that's getting ready to jump off right now. You see, this is why we are told to search the scriptures. The Mashiach told us to watch, and you have to go back in the prophets and read the holy prophets and see what the prophets was going to say was going to take place. So when you see these sayings come up on the earth, it'll dispel all of that garbage that people are feeding after you. And that's basically what our whole thing is. We get that word of mouth thing from somebody that's 15 years old and think they know something, and then we add something to that and then give that to somebody, and they add something to somebody else and they give that to somebody, and when you get back a whole lot of junk. I mean, people can even tell you King James sexual preferences. I ain't got nothing to do with that. What he did was he paid. Look at all the Romans and their sexual preferences. Look at these Gentiles today and their sexual preferences. We didn't have nothing to do with that. What we had to deal with was what our people wrote and the things that they wrote down. As a matter of fact, the Dead Sea Scrolls that they found in 1948, a lot of that, in those caves over there in the Middle East, all of those scrolls go hand in hand with things written in the scripture. So if King James wrote it, he wrote it against this stuff. This has been the Elder of Culture Center of NCCI. Peace, prosperity.
We need something positive.